very much appreciate him being on the show. He is a mainstay on the broadcast and has always taken time to take the time. He was the commissioner of the old Big East and then took over the American before it had a logo, before it had a name, literally ushered in a new conference in the 21st century to America, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I want to congratulate him and thank him on that. Representing UCF, Cincinnati, East Carolina, as well as Houston, Memphis, Navy, South Florida, SMU, Temple, Tulane, Tulsa, and Wichita State. A big thanks to everything that has been done by Mike Aresco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference. And coming up here, East Carolina still rocking and rolling with baseball. Their next game, we'll see them on Friday, June 11th. And South Florida still rocking too. They'll be on Monday, June 7th as well. So a lot of great stuff coming up here, and very excited to talk about that. The American Athletic Conference just finished their annual meeting, so we'll be speaking with Mike Aresco on the goings-on of that and what's going, what's really what came out of the annual meeting, what the big news is from the American Athletic Conference, and of course we'll be getting into some other great topics as well as the TV designations and things that have been going on, which I'm very excited to be able to do with Mike Aresco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, to talk about the TV designations and the times for some of the football games. That came out as well. So some great information, some great stuff coming out from the American Athletic Conference, and we get to go straight to the source and speak with Mike Aresco, the commissioner of the conference, about all things American Athletic this morning at in just a couple minutes at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Time. And then we'll get into my conversation and my update with one of my close friends, Mr. Dave Pasiak. Dave's going to be joining the show to speak on the NBA playoffs and the continuation of the NBA playoffs, which I'm always excited to do with Dave. And we'll be discussing everything NBA coming up here in just a little bit at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. Dave will be joining us to speak on the NBA playoffs, and he'll be following us all the way throughout the playoffs as he let us in and then came back during, I think it was about a couple games into each series, and now as we've gone out of round one and into round two, Dave will be rejoining us to talk about some awesome stuff. So very happy to have Dave here on the show, and as always, I appreciate him so very much. So a lot of great stuff coming up. The American Athletic Conference conversation about the annual meeting, as well as TV designations and times for the football games. East Carolina and USF still being alive in the baseball world, and so much more coming up with Mike Aresco in Hour 1. And in Hour 2, Dave and I will be speaking on the NBA playoffs and all things NBA. So I'm very, very excited that this will all be able to happen for us. So a lot of great stuff coming up here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora as we usher in a new week on Wake Up Call. And I hope that you are doing tremendously well. And I hope that everything in your life is good and that things continue to work out for the best. Always. I truly do. So with that being said, you can find us on Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram at wakeupcall_DT, and of course on wakeupcalldt.com. Like I said, Mike Aresco joining us in just a second. East Carolina and South Florida both advancing to their respective finals after getting their victories on Saturday, June 5th, this past Saturday. And so a lot of great stuff coming up here as we move forward in the beautiful, beautiful baseball world. We get to talk with Mike Aresco about East Carolina and South Florida making it happen, and so much more here on Wake Up Call. So we'll take a step aside for a fast break. When we come back, Commissioner Aresco will be hanging out with us right here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. We appreciate you being here.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
Cafe Cabal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafecabal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Cabal needs. Cafe Cabal, coffee for the soul.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant. Yeah. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, hanging out with you inside of the Cafe Cabal studios. We're also airing live on facebook.com/livenowdt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, and of course on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. Speaking off the air a little bit here as we come back in about some awesome news with the American Athletic Conference. We're here inside of MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin' with Commissioner Mike Aresco of the American Athletic Conference, a mainstay here on Wake Up Call inside of the Cafe Cabal studios. And let's bring him in. There's a lot to discuss. And, of course, there is life for ECU in South Florida right now as they continue inside of the baseball world. So let's bring in the commissioner. Mike, how you doing today?
Hello, Dan, and great to be with you as usual. Thank you.
Absolutely, and we were talking about it off the air, and you know, obviously the positivity that here in baseball season, East Carolina is still rocking and rolling, and not only are they, but we have seen an emergence and a rise of South Florida. Just what you can say about what these two teams are doing to represent the conference in the baseball world.
Well, you know, very proud of them, Dan. Obviously, you know, South Florida, and that's their branding now. You know, they prefer to be called that rather than USF. UCF prefers the UCF, moniker. But they came out of nowhere. You know, they were not one of our top teams in the regular season, and they won the tournament and just have continued since then. In the meantime, East Carolina always was one of our top teams, and I think as you and I discussed before the session here on the air, East Carolina is over the last 30 years has come close to the College World Series a number of times and just hasn't quite made it. They've been 90 feet away a few years ago, twice in the same game where they would have been to Omaha. So they're obviously a terrific team. You know, Cliff Godwin does a great job. But again, I think that the league has always been good in baseball. This year wasn't one of our best years. Houston wasn't, up to par where they usually are. UCF has had some really big seasons and wasn't quite as good this year. Obviously we have a couple of other teams that have done well in the past, and it wasn't as quite as as good a season, but even when we're down a little, it's really a good baseball league. I think we were ranked, and you can correct me, but I think we were ranked around 6th in the country as a league. And I'm just very proud. I think it reflects, Dan, and again, I don't want to get into a long discussion of this part of it, but because we'll go into it in a minute. I know you're going to ask me a few questions about the playoff and other things, but this just reflects the strength of the league. We have a Final Four team in basketball. We win the NIT in basketball. We have a team go to the Peach Bowl undefeated and come within a hair of beating Georgia. Really should have won that game, dominated most of the game. We also have, a number of Olympic sports teams that are doing extremely well. And we have 2 teams from our women's basketball in the NCAA tournament. We're a multi-bid league in college basketball every year. This league's done a lot, and it's right there with the A5, and it just continues to improve each year. So we'll see where it all goes. But baseball, I think, is just a reflection of even when we're not having our best year, we still have a lot of strength.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we've seen these teams grow, we've seen them evolve, and like you said, even on an off year or an uncharacteristic year for one of the schools or a couple of the schools, the team the conference as a whole is relevant, and we've seen relevancy like you talked about in basketball, in Olympic sports, in football, and of course, in baseball, seeing what East Carolina and South Florida have been able to do moving forward here. And I think for me it's unique that here we are a bunch of years in, heading toward a decade in, and we're still talking about what's a P5 and A5, a P6 and whatnot. What does the American have to do to prove itself when you're supposed to win games and win championships? That you've done that, and obviously make a push to make sure that, money that's coming in and TV contracts and different things that you try to do. I mean, you have worked very diligently to bring this conference into prominence, and these teams have done their jobs. These, ADs and presidents have done their jobs, and coming forward, today, looking at the body of work, it seems almost ridiculous or ignorant to think that the American Athletic Conference is not a premier conference based on championships and everything else that's been done, improvement of facilities and, just what the entire team has done under you, as well as when we look at each of their respective institutions. The American Athletic Conference is no slouch by any stretch of the imagination. So I guess on a Monday morning here in June of 2021, I'm a little confused.
Well, Dan, when you're sort of stuck in this whole G5 business, the group of 5, and you get relegated to this, second class status kind of thing, which we've fought hard, and we know we're not. But that's really a function of branding, and it really has an effect on perceptions. Although we have fought out of that, as you know, and it's until we get to what I call the promised land, which is A5 status and a better position in the college football playoff. We're still gonna wrestle with that. I don't think there's much doubt about it. But the numbers don't lie. We've you're evaluated, and you're viewed by how your best teams do and by the depth, that you have in your conference. And when you look at what we've done since 2013, we've had 5 teams in the top 10, or one was in the top 11, which is essentially that top 10. 5 times, Dan, think about that. We've had multiple top 25 teams. We've had teams in the final, CFP rankings, in the top 10. 6 New Year's Bowl appearances in 8 years. One was an automatic in 2013, but we'd have had it anyway if we were in that G5 business. We've got 3 New Year's Bowl wins against top 10 teams, and we would have had a fourth if we'd hung on and won this past year, which we really should have done. And then 52 wins against the A5 in 8 seasons. 5 wins against top 10 non-conference teams. No other G4 even has one. No G4 has finished in the top 10. A 67-26 regular season record against the G5. And you know the regular season is what matters. And we've had 72 future NFL players on our conference championship game rosters. I mean, think about that. We had 27 one year in 2015. 27 players on that field played in the NFL. Talk about power, strength and power. 180 NFL players since 2013. 114 draft picks in the past 8 years. This year, Dan, and this is very telling, 19 draft picks, 2 first rounders. Big 12 had none. We had 2. 19. The combined G4, those 4 conferences combined had 15, and we had 19 alone. And we've had 13 first-round selections since 2014, and that's more than the combined total of the other 4 conferences, which was 9. So think about those things, Dan. I mean, the numbers don't lie. Now, we're facing essentially an existential challenge, but it also is an existential opportunity in this new CFP plan, whatever it's going to be. We don't know yet. The working group has not reported back yet. And when they do, we'll have some idea of how they want to go. There is a meeting in Chicago, as you know, in June 17th and 18th, where whatever they come forward with, prior to that would be discussed. And we'll be in there fighting hard. I'll be in there. I don't think I'll necessarily have a lot of support in the room because we're kind of caught in the crossfire. You can imagine, the 4 G4 and the but the point I've been making to writers recently, Dan, and it's not to disparage the G4 at all, but we have separated ourselves completely, just as the A5 felt that they had separated themselves at one point down the road. And remember, we were relegated from BCS status as the old Big East to this position now at a time when we really didn't have any leverage. And if we had leverage, we would have fought it, but we didn't. And now we do. And we've got to get out of that. We've got to exit that G5. It's really critical. I don't know what the setup's going to be down the road. And we'll figure that out. It's just, again, we know we have achieved a lot. We've earned it. We're going to continue to earn it. We've got some outstanding football teams this fall with Cincinnati and others. We're getting better in basketball. We'll continue to do well in Olympic sports, and we'll just, as I keep telling our membership, you got to keep fighting. Archie Manning had an old saying, you got to keep sawing wood. Eventually you get some results.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, to just keep controlling what you can control, which is to go out and, put together good product and make sure that, these teams are winning. And you have done that, and you've done that in numerous sports and throughout the years. This is not a fluke. It's not a Cinderella story. So you have your annual meeting. That just concludes here recently. What can you say about the biggest takeaways, the biggest pieces of the American Athletics annual meeting?
Yes, Dan. The annual meeting was very upbeat. Had a great year, obviously, but it was also very sobering and serious in terms of what we think we need to accomplish. And also, we look back, and we were pleased that we got through COVID safely, and that we were able to play. And we were one of the conferences, as you recall, that refused to say we didn't feel we could play safely. We said, no, we can play safely. We were one of the originals. And we had a great medical group that did an unbelievable job. We talked a little about that. And, it's been a tragedy for the country, no question, and with far bigger issues in sports. And I commended our presidents and chancellors for all the work they had to do on their campus. And sports was only a part of that. Well, you could argue a small part. It's also an important part because it's the front porch to the universities, as you know. So that was a discussion. But then we had a major discussion as well about where we go and how we deal with this CFP and what our strategy is going to be. And it's going to be a very, very aggressive strategy. We're going to be out there talking about all these things. It's clear we talked about, timing and what we need to do. We talked about the investments we've made and we're making. And, again, we also will have, as I said, a serious media plan because, I don't know whether a lot of people are even aware of some of the statistics that I cited to you. Maybe they are. We've tried to point out what we've done and how we compare. And when you have a yawning gap like we do now with the G4, that says you belong in the A5. They call themselves the Autonomy 5. As you know, the media likes to say Power 5, but we prefer these days to say A5. And, the whole power thing suggests that anyone not in that group is not a power comp. But when we stand on the podiums at the Final Four or, at a big bowl game that we've won against a top 10 team, to say you're not a power team or a power conference is kind of silly. So we had a long discussion about what we're going to do and how we're going to deal. And we're still, we're still shadow boxing, Dan, because we don't know what the CFP, proposal will be and how it will be vetted. Eventually we'll know. But that's as I said, that's the existential challenge. That's right before us, and it's going to determine our future for a long, long time, possibly. Because if this thing gets extended and revamped and expanded, which is potentially likely, then we're going to have to have a better place in it, or 8 years of our work is kind of washed down the drain, and we're just not going to let that happen. It's been too hard a road, too great a struggle, too much success, and we can't let that happen. So the second thing is the A5. We want to be part of the autonomy group. It's a parallel challenge, and we're making our points. We're talking to anybody, commissioners, presidents. We're making those points quietly, but we will. We'll follow up on that, but it is less urgent right now in the sense that, the CFP is upon us. There's something may well happen in the next several months. We don't know for sure. There are probably those in the group who think we're moving too fast, but and I know that there are some meetings coming up. And so that's the more immediate challenge, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to be at that autonomy table. We should be at that table. I think the outstanding work of our medical group was a reflection of why they could have made a real contribution to those talks that were taking place among the A5. And maybe they could have, maybe they would have made a difference with the Pac-12 or the Big Ten. I don't know. But I'll tell you this, we were tracking the myocarditis issue long before others seemed to have been. And when, there was this, you remember that almost panic about myocarditis, or, and the Big Ten ultimately decided not to play. I don't know if that was a huge issue or not. For them, it seemed to be. We were tracking on that, and we knew that it was not likely to be the kind of issue that should prevent you from playing, that you could do the workups, you could, check on your student athletes, you could make sure there were, and yet you could monitor it. And so we in the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12 decided to move ahead. But our medical group was just outstanding. It's just one example of where we can make a contribution in that room and should make a contribution. We've got major schools and major markets. I didn't even get into the non-competitive stuff, Dan. We're in 3 of the top 10 markets in the country. We also are in the DC market through Navy, which is unofficial, but that's really their market as well. In addition, we have we're in 19% of the country's homes. We have, tremendous, geographical reach. We have, we've got a tremendous TV deal with affords us great exposure. We've had, hundreds of games with over 1 million viewers. All these things really matter, and that's why I think in the end, we should be in that A5 room. We've got big schools. UCS, one of the biggest in the country in terms of enrollment. We've got important schools. We've got static. It should not be set in stone. There's got to be a path in. There has to be upward mobility. That's the American way. The idea that you can achieve and you can move up. This notion that you're stuck, that's unreasonable. To be stuck in a position after you continue to achieve. That's the whole point. And as it turned out, because we had some upheaval back in 2012, we were relegated from BCS status, which would have put us in this A5, A6 group. We were relegated, and now we've clawed our way back, and we need to continue that fight and make sure that we get there. There've been a lot of skeptics, of course, but I've always felt deep down that we would get there as long as we continue to achieve at a high level, and that's what we've continued to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is kind of scraping away at it. And like you said, upward mobility. The American way, the American dream. That's America has never cut itself off. It's never said we will go this far and stop. It's always been the goal to continue. This country was built on piece by piece putting things together, and so I definitely can appreciate the point of if the A5, aka the autonomous 5, if they exist, then why can't there be an autonomous 6? Why can't there be an expansion of that? Where are you at with that? Because I do want to get into the college football playoff stuff, of course, but where are you at with autonomy, the moves that you've made as a conference for maybe some things that people don't know? Do you look like you're becoming an autonomy group? Are you mirroring the autonomy group? And because it's a legislative thing, where can you be in this when it has to be written into law? So kind of bring me into what's going on with the conference. What are the schools looking like in comparison to the autonomy group? And, legislatively, where can you go with this?
Well, that's a good point, because it is a legislative issue to be in the autonomy group. And incidentally, we are in 19 million television households, and it's 16% of the nation's television homes. I think I said 19% of the homes. It's 16% of the homes, but 19 million television households. And by the way, the combined population in our states is 110 plus million. And if you add some states where there's significant interest, like New Jersey for Temple, Arkansas with Memphis, Kentucky for Cincinnati, the number grows to 126 million, people in those states. So you can see the broad reach we have. Yes, you made a good point. It's a legislative issue. We would have to go to the NCAA Council, which we would plan to do. We would have to then, get approval of the board of directors at the Division I level, and we think we can do that ultimately. But that's the process there. The second, though, the parallel process is the CFP, and that's separate, Dan. That's not a legislative thing. It's completely separate from NCAA governance.
Right.
It's been set up by the CFP, by the FBS, 10 conferences plus Notre Dame, and so consequently, you fight through that on a different level and in a different way. But that's, as I said earlier, that's the more urgent challenge, because that's how we're going to be known, and that's how we're going to be branded, and that's how we're going to be seen, by the public, by the media, and that's really our future. To put us in a better competitive position, to generate more revenue. We're not generating anywhere near the revenue we deserve, especially with the huge gap between the G4 and us. And then finally, I don't know what's going to happen with the playoff, whether it's going to be, whether the recommendation will be to stay at 4, whether it'll be go to 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, who knows at this point. And I'm not even going to make a prediction, because nobody knows. Luis Tiant once, there were some unusual things that had happened in baseball. We all know Luis Tiant, the great Red Sox pitcher. And they said, boy, that was pretty unexpected. And he said, well, in baseball, you don't know nothing. And that's the truth in this too. We don't know anything. We don't know what's going to happen. But we will be ready, depending on what recommendations come out of the working group, to figure out what our position, should be. The composition of let's say there is an expanded playoff. The composition of it is very important, and obviously I don't know whether there'll be automatic qualifiers or whether they'll be all at larges or a mixture. Who knows? Nobody knows at this point. But whatever it is, we want to make sure that we're on the same footing as the A5, because that's what we deserve. And we've got to, as I said, exit one way or another, exit this group of 5 designation, because it has been, very damaging to us in the sense that we have achieved, beyond those parameters, and really have, had to deal with that branding. And that, that means you don't get the coverage you deserve sometimes. You don't get the respect you deserve, especially with the committee. I don't think we've gotten the respect from the selection committee that we deserve, Dan. You saw what happened with Cincinnati this past year. You saw how good they were. You saw them in the bowl game. Incidentally, they played that bowl game without 5 of their best players. The 2 great, All-American defensive backs, Ahmad Gardner and James Wiggins, who were both Ahmad Gardner will be probably a top draft pick, and James Wiggins was one. And he didn't play, and neither did the center. He didn't make the trip. Their top running back did not play. You saw what the backup did. He had scored that touchdown, outran the whole Georgia team. We also, unfortunately, in the first half, and it was our fault, we lost our left tackle to a targeting penalty, and that we still ended up playing that game dead. He took a 53-yard field goal as time ran out to beat us, but also we came close to wrapping it up there toward the end and just didn't quite do it. But the point is, Cincinnati was a really good team, and you saw 2 lost teams move ahead of them. You saw a team that, lost to a depleted, LSU team that didn't drop. Cincinnati would drop because they had a COVID issue. A&M had a COVID issue. They didn't drop. So I do think that there is, an issue of branding that affects how teams are viewed. And Cincinnati was a very, very good team. And we'll just have to keep fighting that battle. I mean, I think the facts are clear. I think we have to make our case. No one's going to make it for us. And we'll see where we go.
And that's the thing. Speaking here with the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco, on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Cafe Kubal studios. Those college football playoff spring meetings that we kind of were talking about just a little bit here, a little preview into it. The fact that we could see as many as a 16-team playoff. Right now there are 4. We could see that there's 5 possibilities: 6, 8, 10, 12, or 16. I know that you said that you're not going to prognosticate what it would be, but what do you think? I mean, if you were sitting within the group and you could expand to 6, 8, 10, 12, or 16, what are you comfortable with, Mike? What do you think would be a good approach to college football, having been around the collegiate athletic world for so long?
Dan, I got to be careful here. I do think expansion would be good for the game. And we could certainly live with 8 or 12 if that's what, the working group says. We don't know what it's going to say. We just don't know. But we think expansion is probably the best chance that we have of having an opportunity to play in it and to be relevant, nationally when it comes to this kind of thing. So we'll see. But again, I don't know what they're going to do at this point. We just don't know. And regardless, though, the issue becomes whatever they do, we want to be, again, viewed as essentially an A6. And I think that's something that, again, we've earned. I think it's interesting, and again, I don't cite these statistics to disparage other conferences, but we were ranked ahead of the highest, Pac-12 team on occasion. We've had more teams in the final polls than some of those, A5 conferences. 3 of them at one, over the years. We were obviously ranked ahead of the highest ranked Pac-12 team this year. We've had as many teams as some of those in the final CFP rankings. I can go on and on. And we have a winning record against one of the A5 conferences. And we have, if you take our top teams, we have outstanding records against the A5 conferences. And, I mentioned the NFL draft picks. We had actually more selections, in 2017 than in the Big 12. This year we had two first-round selections, and one of those A5 conferences didn't have any. I could go on and on, but this conference has achieved. Now, to some extent, change is sometimes hard to process for people. And we, if you look back, the pedigree of our school, we've got some schools that have played some great football over the years, but we also have some newcomers that are powerful, like UCF and Memphis. Memphis has had some sporadic success over the years, but you look at our league and you see a team like UCF with all the potential in the world, and it's realized some of it. and then you look at a USF, and you look at others. You look at the history of East Carolina football, and they've been down a little bit. Newcomers, they won't stay down. And you look at like UCF. You look at Houston and what they've done. The depth in this league, it's not just a one-horse league. This has been Tulsa is a very good team. They do it without necessarily the large student body, the resources that other teams have, but they get it done, and they've been they really had a tremendous team this year. Zaven Collins didn't play in their bowl game. That was a factor for that. But other than that, they had a great season and took Cincinnati right to the limit in our championship game. So if you look at the depth and the quality of the league, it's there. But you don't necessarily have teams that immediately get the attention. Like a Michigan and Ohio State and Alabama. And it's sometimes assumed that Cincinnati isn't going to be able, or our top teams won't play with them. Well, that's been proven wrong. Georgia was really, once they got JT Daniels at quarterback, they were as good as any team in the SEC. And you saw what happened in the bowl game. You saw what happened against Auburn, which had beaten both Georgia and Alabama, the two teams that played in the championship game, and what UCF did in that game. You saw what Houston did with a number 8 Florida State in 2015. You saw what Houston did against Oklahoma and Louisville in 2016. Those were both top 3 teams when they played them. And Houston won both of those games decisively. UCF against Baylor was supposed to lose by 20 points. I think they were the biggest underdog in the history of the BCS, and they scored 52 points and pounded Baylor, which was running away with the Big 12 and scoring 30, 40 points a game and winning all their games big. So we've always performed in Memphis. Even when we lose, Memphis gave Penn State all they wanted a few years ago. Tremendous game, and also played without their right tackle and the great tight end, who at the last minute couldn't play. And then we had another performance, UCF against LSU. It was an 8-point game, and it was a 3-point game at the half. UCF had the early lead, and again, they didn't have Mackenzie Milton. Mackenzie Milton were on that field, and there were some opt-outs, with LSU, but they were still a powerful team. And so we've held our own, and I always say our top teams are as good as anyone's. And you have to look ahead. You have to. The way I'll close this part of the discussion, Dan, is Mike Slive, the late Mike Slive, the late great Mike Slive, was a good friend, and I've done some serious radio and I've done a lot of Paul Feinbaum lately, but at the time it was a serious segment, and I was talking about how this isn't your grandfather's Temple. It isn't your look what they did under Matt Rule. Not your grandfather's Memphis. Not your grandfather's other teams. And Mike called me and said, by the way, I happen to be driving, and I heard you on Sirius Radio saying that. And he said, you should keep saying it because it's true. He said, those teams are not what they once were. And that is really important. And he said, I had those teams in Conference USA. Remember, Mike was Conference USA commissioner for a number of years before he became SEC commissioner. And he said, they are not the same now. They have a renewed commitment. They have, have really done a lot to improve their situation. And that's why this notion of upward mobility is really important. You have to have the ability to move forward. You can't have a situation where you're arbitrarily excluded and you show that you've done what you need to do, you've achieved. It's just profoundly wrong to have that much achievement and to get nowhere with it. And as I said earlier, upward mobility and opportunity are hallmarks of the American experience. They're what we've always, as a country, been about. And times change, circumstances change. They changed dramatically against us eight or 9 years ago with all the conference realignment, but they've now gone the other way, and they've changed dramatically for us. So this autonomy group status has to be dynamic. It can't be set in stone, and you can't freeze the membership. And that's the point we're going to make pretty loudly, and we'll see where we go with it.
Yeah, we look at the working group that will be, sitting with this and the opportunity that this could happen, and that's working group being Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlesby, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, Notre Dame AD Jack Swarbrick, and Mountain West Commissioner Craig Thompson. Thoughts on that group working together, because I know you have relationships around the collegiate athletic world. So, thoughts on kind of the task that group has and what these gentlemen will really have to be dealing with, as this is no minor issue by any stretch of the imagination. There's name, image, and likeness and all these other things going on, but the slightest the most minuscule conversation about the college football playoff gets a lot of reaction from people because people are constantly looking at expansion. So what can you say about this working group and the task that they have to try to figure out what's going to work, as we're within a contract that's supposed to depart in 2025, but there's the notion that maybe things could be altered here before then. Just what you could say about this group and what's on their shoulders right now.
Well, first of all, whatever they do will not be the last word. This is just a working group. It's going to make some recommendations, and then the entire group will have a chance to vet it. And by the way, the entire group has been involved in this over the years. We've talked a lot about this quietly in meetings over the years, and Bill Hancock and CFP set up this working group. But whatever they do will be subject to serious vetting. And, we don't, as I said, we don't know what, they're going to do. Now, granted, when you come up with a proposal, it gets a lot of publicity and it gets a lot of attention, and it takes on kind of a life of its own. But they'll be, first of all, whatever happens, this is a complicated issue. There are those who think maybe we're moving too fast. Others, feel we should go ahead, full speed ahead. But remember, you've got those contract bowl games sitting there, and you got to figure that out. You'd have to figure out schedules and all sorts of other things. In addition, you really have a situation where the conferences have to decide whether they're comfortable with how this thing is playing out. So. There's a lot going on, and I haven't even mentioned TV. You don't go to TV until you have a plan, obviously. So Nobody's done anything in that regard. But TV will have, our friends at ESPN will have a large say in this, especially if anything is done within the term of the current contract. And then, but as I said earlier, it's really a very serious matter for us, as it is for other conferences, because. Who knows? This was a 12-year deal. So we've been, we've been stuck in this G5 thing now for 7 years. This will be the 8th year. And that's really had an impact on us. So we obviously know what, a long-term deal can do if you're not in the right position. And so we're going to take it, as seriously and as, and we're going to deal with it as aggressively as we possibly can, knowing that our future is at stake. And if you don't continue to ascend, if you don't continue to improve, you can always go the wrong direction. You can start regressing. So last thing we want to do is have that happen. And, you've seen some of the A5 conferences have struggled, and we know that, we're not immune to anything that might happen. But we also know that we've got an aspirational group that is making enormous progress on all levels and we have a new TV deal, as you know, and it gives us the resources now to do what we need to do. We don't have to have as much money as the A5 to compete with them. We've proven that. We proved it when we were getting almost nothing from our other TV deal. I mean, we built this conference, Dan, when we were getting just a tiny bit of money from TV, but we had the exposure, and we were able to get in front of the country and play these great games and have. Temple almost beat Notre Dame in prime time on ABC and win these big bowl games in front of huge audiences. The Georgia, we didn't win this one, but the Georgia-Cincinnati game, and everybody saw how competitive Cincinnati was. That game had almost 9 million viewers. It was the highest rated game outside the 2 playoff games. And that tells you something. And we had, great audiences for UCF Auburn and other games where we have performed and we won. Yeah. And so we had the ability to make our mark, and without that we wouldn't have. But now we've got the resources, and as I pointed out, you don't have to have the same TV deal that the A5 have to be part of that group, because if that were the case, there'd be an A2, because the SEC and the Big Ten are so far ahead of everybody else. You wouldn't even have an A5; it'd be an A2, and that's not the way it is, and it doesn't have to be either. And in our case, we've got, you know the number. It's a big number. I don't mention it publicly, but everybody knows what it is. And that deal has helped us. We also have a separate deal with CBS Sports Network for Navy, which is in our conference. We also have, an Army-Navy deal. We also have, a separate basketball deal, which other G4 conferences I don't think have. And that's with CBS, the main network. So we've got what we need now. And that's why I think we will continue to achieve. We've got that hunger, that aspiration. Our recruiting has improved each year. Everybody's going to be wrestling, Dan, with the transfer portal and the abolition of the year in residency. That's going to have potentially an impact. Nobody's yet sure what that impact's going to be, but it's probably going to affect A5 conferences as well as ours.
Yeah.
NIL will have an impact. We're not sure. That's the Wild West at this point. We're not sure what's going to happen with recruiting and retention of players with NIL. Hard to say how it's going to affect camaraderie in the locker room. Nobody knows. But those are the kinds of things that we're going to be keeping our eye on. But in the end, it's up to us to continue to achieve, and I think we will.
Speaking here with the Commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco. Mike, before I let you go, if there was to be an expansion, here are some of the potential ways that it would look, and I'd love to get your thoughts on the, hypothetically speaking, top 5 teams as selected by the committee, plus a guaranteed group of 5 spot, which they're currently including the American in right now. Or there's a top 6 teams as selected by the committee with no guaranteed spot for the group of 5, or there's Power 5 champions plus an at-large team, or Power 5 champions plus the highest-ranked group of 5 champion. Thoughts on those models that would be modeled around if there were to be like 6, so to speak? What do you think of those models that would include a highest-ranked group of 5 champion where you would have to, be the team that won your conference, or if there was a guaranteed group of 5 spot where no matter what there was going to be somebody there, or if it's just the top 6 or an at-large? What are your thoughts on those kind of different ways to look at the expansion?
Well, Dan, it's probably better that I don't get into the actual specifics. Let's see what the working group comes up with. But I can tell you this: the notion that the G5 spot, we think that should be our spot, and if the G4 can get a spot too, more power to them. But we think that we should get a spot, period. If all we end up with is the same situation we've had with the G5, even if there is some level of access. I mean, there's access now, right? It's just a question of we haven't been able to convince the committee that we're in the top 4, even though I thought we had some teams that were worthy of it. We just don't want to be held back by this branding, this G5 business. And it's just not, it hasn't worked fairly for us because we're not really part of that group. I don't think we ever were, but we were unfortunately relegated to it, and we had to deal with it, and we've had to deal with it for a long time now. So I don't like it. I don't like the designation. I've said it many times, and I'll say it, and I'll say it in the room too. I don't have any problem with saying it in the room because the gap between us and the G4 is enormous. Now, again, it does make you a popular guy in the room with the G4, but again, we were the ones relegated last time. It happened to us, and we couldn't, fight back effectively, 8 or 9 years ago. And now, the shoe's on the other foot in terms of what we've accomplished and what we've done. And we just have to figure out a way to be with the other. There are groups. If everything levels out and there are no longer any groups and everybody's on some kind of equal footing, that's fine too. The question then would be, okay, what's the composition of the selection committee so that we don't, you don't have a situation where, you don't get a fair shake from the committee. And I never criticize that committee personally. I think they've got great people and they try to do a good job. But I do think that inherent in this is this whole issue of branding. And I saw it last year. I saw it the year before. I saw the way we're ranked. You find 2, 3, 4 loss, P5 teams ranked ahead of our teams. And it doesn't seem to happen when it's a G5 team. A team that plays, I won't single out teams, but teams that plays a weaker schedule than we do, but might only have 1 loss or no losses, ends up ranked ahead of some of our teams that clearly it might have happened a few years ago with a 2-loss Cincinnati team that destroyed BC in the bowl game. it clearly was better than any other G5 team, even though they lost to Memphis in our championship game. But they weren't necessarily going to be ranked ahead of those teams. And to me, that doesn't happen when it's a P5 team. I just want to see consistency and fairness and an acknowledgement that we're a strong league and that we play really, good football, and ultimately we can hold our own. So that would, who knows what's going to happen. I don't know what kind of proposal is going to come forward. We really have to wait and see. But, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting few months, Dan. No question.
Yeah, and you'll have the chance, to be around this eventually. In the not too distant future, you'll have the opportunity to be around this. So just what you can say about that. I mean, the presentation of some potential ideas is going to be coming up here within the next, little bit, next few weeks and whatnot. The summer could be very busy as the commissioners get set to converge in a couple different ways. What can you say to that, knowing that, this is a, very potentially big summer for the American Athletic Conference as well as for the future of college football?
It is, and I think we have to wait and see at this point. We'll keep our powder dry, as they say. We'll wait and see. It's going to be, as you said, an interesting period. But I think you have to, as I said, we've been shadow boxing a bit. You really have to see what is put forward, and then there'll be, fortunately, time to debate it and a time to have the conferences weigh in, the coaches weigh in. And obviously the media and the public will weigh in. And it's important because in terms of the sports scene, because college football has really become the second most popular sport to the NFL, period. I mean, you look at the college football playoff ratings, and they're higher than the NBA playoffs, or higher than the baseball World Series. Who would have ever thought that 20 or 30 years ago? But they're really strong ratings. People do care. People around the country care. And which is good. It's good that they care. I mean, they should. If you don't have that kind of passion, then the sport doesn't have that kind of, following, and it does. And so consequently, this will be closely watched. There'll be a lot of controversy, I'm sure. And other conferences will have their own views about the world and how it should look. And that's why, you get in a room and you try to hammer it out. And if you don't, then, who knows what's going to happen down the road. But going to be an interesting, summer and fall, and I don't know. Again, we don't know what's going to happen. And it's always possible that there'll be strong sentiment to keep it at 4. I tend not to think so, but what do I know? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, the FBS commissioners, obviously, you being a part of that, will meet June 17th and 18th. At the tail end of the annual Collegiate Commissioners Association meeting. And then following that, there will be a commissioners meeting with the College Football Playoff Board of Managers in Dallas, Texas, not too far from Irving, where the American Athletic now calls home for its base to operate for operations. So, Mike, really quick before I let you go here, to kind of go with the conversation of the A5 and the G4, that puts you in the middle with this American Athletic Conference right now, trying to get into the autonomous and separate from the group of. Do you feel in that way that you're a man on an island? And if you do, how do you function within that? You respect the A5, you respect the G4, you have obviously respect for your product of the American, but do you feel like a man on an island right now in a transitionary period? How do you see it?
Well, you can feel that way, and I've felt that way over the years now because we are caught in the middle, and we're struggling to get to another level. And that has an impact on the other 4. And by the way, the other 4 can be doing exactly what we're doing. It's just that we've had the achievements. We're 4 years in a row now. We've been on New Year's Day, and we've had these top 10 teams. We've done what we needed to do. But yeah, I do sometimes feel alone in this, but that's fine. We just have to fight for our position. I get along personally with everyone, and we're all friends, but in the room, you have to fight for, Jim Delaney and I were friends, even though, and Mike Slive, and Mike said, We didn't always see eye to eye. I didn't like what happened to us 8 or 9 years ago, but I had to accept it. And ultimately now there might be a situation that arises similar to that. But we're all friends, but we all understand. I think the other four understand where I'm coming from, and I think if they were in my position, they might well be doing what I'm doing. I don't know. I think there's no question that you have to, do what's right for your organization, and that's what's essentially happened. But it's lonely at times, certainly in the room, and you just have to work it through. That's really all you can say about it. It can be tough when you're caught in a crossfire and you're in the middle. But on the other hand, you can persuade and you can take a position and fight for that position, and ultimately we'll see where it goes.
And during your annual meeting, separate from kind of what we just spoke about, but staying with the American and staying with upward mobility, just what you could say about the appointments to conference committees, and maybe what you would like to say about different people that within this annual meeting, effective June 4th, were put into their appointments inside of the conference.
Well, we've got a great group. David Rudd did a terrific job as our chair, and he's now transitioned off. We have 2-year terms, and Neville Pinto of Cincinnati is also terrific. Will take over as chair, and vice chair will be Mike Fitz of Tulane, and Mike has been really strong advocate, in our conference, and he'll be the vice chair. In addition, Renu Kator is our NCAA board rep, and she does, a great job, and she's been very, very aggressive on our behalf in that forum. David Rudd had been on the presidential forum, so we're well represented within the NCAA as well. Michael Kelly is chair of our AD group, and he's terrific, as is Chris Pesman, who is the AD at Houston. He's our vice chair. And we've added some presidents to our audit committee. We've added some presidents to our executive committee. So it's a great group we have. And Gerald Turner, I don't want to leave out Gerald because he is our rep on the management group of the CFP. So as you know, each FBS conference has a presidential rep, and Gerald is ours, and they're the ones ultimately that will make these decisions. And Gerald is knowledgeable and is as well respected as anyone out there. He was years ago was president of Ole Miss and very active in the Knight Commission, and he's been president of SMU for a long time. And look at what they're doing now; done a phenomenal job there. So we've got great group, and we have, as I said too, it doesn't get the attention because again, so much of this is about football.
Yeah.
But basketball is very good in this conference, extremely good. And we've hired, a new basketball, person, Brian Thornton, who's absolutely great. He does most men's and women's basketball. He's done a great job, and we're going to bulk up there and do some hiring as well. But also we want to focus and make sure we're really good in everything, football, basketball, women's basketball, Olympic sports. And that's, as you know, Dan, you want to be well-rounded, and that's what I think we are. And we've got, a tremendous group of SWAs, senior women administrators who have really helped us, get organized and be really a powerful conference in all sports. So, again, great ADs group. I can't mention everybody. Troy Dannon is our football oversight representative, and that's, a really important job. And then we've got Chet Gladchuck at Navy, who, as you know, has been around a long time and really, really knowledgeable person. But I can't mention everybody, but it's I'm very, very happy with the group we have and happy to represent them. It's an honor. It's a privilege. It's also a real responsibility to represent this group and try to get them to where they want to be.
And final point here with the Commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco, on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Cafe Kubal studios. Got to ask, I know we've talked about it before, you have 12 teams that are currently with 12 schools that are in the American Athletic, Wichita State in every sport except for football, Navy there for football only. Is the ear still to the ground at the thought of potentially, as we talk about upward mobility and the American dream, is there thoughts that the American could dream bigger and And is there still the open conversation of looking to ever expand the conference?
We've talked about it from time to time. It's really on the back burner. That's. I probably should leave it at that. We don't really have any plans to expand. We're really happy with 11. We've got 11 strong football schools, 11 strong basketball schools. As you know, we have Wichita State. We have Navy and football only.
Yeah.
We don't really feel we need to expand. If the opportunity arises where a team can really, add to our brand and it makes sense on other levels, then we would at least consider it. But right now, it's completely on the back burner. We're really focused on getting where we need to go on the CFP and the A5.
Coming from Mike Aresco. Mike, as always, I appreciate it. Appreciate you being open to discussion on all different topics and really breaking things down. And as always, what you bring to the table here at Wake Up Call is being real, being honest, and really talking about the things that matter to the conference, that matter to you as its commissioner, and the goals that you have moving forward, and not shying away from the conversations and really never beating around the bush and directly looking at the topics that you would like to see addressed and discussed. And I very much appreciate the fact that you make time for my show, as well as the fact that you speak about the things that are very pertinent to the time. So, as always, I do thank you for that, and it never goes unnoticed.
Well, thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it. You're always knowledgeable. You're always, you always ask great questions. You obviously follow these matters, and you've also over the years been fair to the conference. I don't expect people to just agree with everything we say or do. People have their own opinions, but you've always been. I think you've looked at things objectively and looked at our conference in a fair manner. And I appreciate being on with you because it's always a good good discussion. A really I would say it's a varied and really a discussion that hits the main points. So I really appreciate, having a chance to talk to you from time to time, and hope you and your family and all your listeners stay well. Hope everybody can get vaccinated and we can get beyond this pandemic. It's still not quite over, but we're obviously optimistic, looking forward to, the summer and fall. And again, thanks for having me, Dan. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Make sure you enjoy the nice weather, and hopefully we'll be able to do something with the American down in Texas soon with a hopeful future looking brighter than the days that we've had here in these last few months. So stay safe as always, and I'll look forward to talking with you soon.
Thanks, Dan. You take care. Bye now.
Take care. That coming from Commissioner Mike Aresco one more time here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. Appreciate having Mike here on the show as always, and really is an honor to have not only a commissioner in the collegiate athletic world, but somebody who has spoken with me and been around me since they were the old Big East. And then, I remember standing in 2013 when Syracuse made the Final Four and Louisville won the championship, when it was Louisville, Wichita State. And this is the irony. It was Louisville, Wichita State, Syracuse, and also Michigan. And just the cool thing about that scenario is that Louisville was part of what would become the American at the time, and Wichita State was not. And just the irony of having those four schools, knowing that Syracuse was going out, but Louisville was still within it before they joined the ACC. And then there's Wichita State, and there's Mike Aresco, not even knowing that Wichita State was going to eventually join them. And kind of the irony of the conversation that I'm having right now is the fact that I'm wearing my Fear the Shocker shirt. So, and that was the first time I got to see them live on site on location when I was covering the Final Four in the old Georgia Dome in Atlanta. So going back to that time, I remember standing shoulder to shoulder with Mike Aresco and talking with him and congratulating him on, having the championship inside of the conference because Louisville was part of the conference. And I remember, that the American, when we were talking, the American didn't have a name. It didn't have a logo. They didn't know what it was going to be. And to look at that back in 2013, and now here we are in 2021, 8 years later, and more than 8 years later because it's past March, to see what the American has done in almost a decade. I mean, Mike Aresco, he could have just packed up shop. They were left with 3 schools. They were literally left with Cincinnati, UConn, and South Florida. That was it. And they had to brand that. They had to bring teams in. I can argue, and I have argued, that no other conference in America was affected or depleted more than the American was when they were basically raided and set on fire, and then they rose out of those ashes like a phoenix. So to see the schools that did it, I want to commend the schools that believed. I want to commend Cincinnati and South Florida for staying. I want to commend UCF, East Carolina, Houston, Memphis, SMU, Temple, Tulane, and Tulsa for joining. I want to commend Navy for leaving their football independent status that they had for over 100 years and coming into the conference, and Wichita State for being the newest addition that decided to come in for all sports, and except for football because they don't have a football team. So to see all of this become a reality is a beautiful thing. And to see 12 schools overall, but see, 11 for football and then 11 everywhere else because Navy is not in it for anything else other than football. To see these schools come together and comprise this league and see what East Carolina is doing with baseball and see what, South Florida is doing with baseball and what UCF and Cincinnati and Memphis and Houston and Navy and SMU and Temple and Tulsa have done with football, and how Tulane's rising in Wichita State and their history with basketball coming into the conference. There's so much to be said about this. I mentioned every team. If one team's good at baseball and another team's good at football and another team's good at basketball, and on and on and on. I mean, we have seen success in this conference. There's not a single team where they've done nothing. They've all done something. So historically, in just 8 years and counting, the American Athletic Conference has put themselves in a situation of they win, they're prominent, they send people to the professional ranks, they know what they're doing, and they're led by really good coaches and really strong student athletes. So I'm not here to beat the drum because somebody told me to. I made the decision to support and cover the American Athletic Conference objectively since its institution. And I talk about their successes because they're vast. I have Mike Aresco on the show many, many times because I know what it's like to be doing the right thing, working your tail off, and still being treated like a redheaded stepchild. So with all due respect to Mike Aresco and the other redheaded stepchildren out there, you'll always have a voice on Wake Up Call. Because what's right is right. Hard work and determination and dedication and doing things with morals and values and faith deserves to be appreciated and respected. And leaders like Mike Aresco deserve an open forum where they're not quieted, overlooked, underappreciated, or underrepresented. And that'll never happen here on Wake Up Call. So with that being said, Mike, you're always a part of the show. And to all of the commissioners and all the people out there looking to do things the right way, I implore you and I welcome you to the show. Take a step aside on Wake Up Call inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. When we come back, my man Dave Pasiak bringing us into hour number 2 with the 2021 NBA playoffs continuation right after this. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville beats. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
It would be a pity if you don't shop at Honda City.
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. He kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have at any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. Inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, we're also on Facebook Live on facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, which is shared on facebook.com/livenowdt. So you'll see it in the feeds of both of those on Facebook, as well as on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. So however you're tuning in, thank you so much for being a part of the show. We're here in hour number 2, and inside of MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin', our resident NBA minds, Mr. Dave Pasiak, here with us throughout the playoffs. We spoke going into the playoffs, during the first round, and now as we are here in the second round of the playoffs, Dave is back to discuss with us what's going on inside of the NBA. He is your NVU Linden Hornets men's basketball Division III head coach, and he just finished a monumental season for him individually. And, of course, the team was able to go 5-5 and be one of the few teams in Division III that got to actually play games this year. So congratulations to them on that. Dave is back here with us having some fun with the NBA playoffs that we'll see, that have seen Utah and the Clippers, Denver and Phoenix, Philadelphia and Atlanta and Milwaukee and Brooklyn all being in a position right now to see who will make the Final Four of the NBA 2021 playoffs. So with that being said, I'm very happy, very elated, and very honored, as always, to welcome back to the show a good friend of mine who I have tremendous respect for and has been with me really since the day I returned to Syracuse, back to my hometown. So, Mr. Pasiak, how are we doing today?
I'm good, Dan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. And Dave, I know that you're a LeBron fan. Let's just get it out while we got it. LeBron bumped out of the playoffs by Phoenix. All jokes aside, the Phoenix Suns did everything, and I believe you said it. They did everything they needed to do last year in the bubble when they had the 9-game end of the regular season. I believe they won them all, and they did everything they possibly could to try and earn a spot in the playoffs. I mean, they were perfect in the bubble, and yet they were sent home, didn't have enough overall. And they proved that was not a Cinderella story. Ironically, at Disney, at the Wide World of Sports, not a Cinderella story. And they were able to come back this year and not only get into the playoffs, but be the number 2 seed behind only Utah. What can you say about how Phoenix ended last season in the bubble, did everything they were supposed to do, and then showed that wasn't a fluke and did what they needed to do this time around and are now into the second round of the playoffs after taking down the reigning national champions?
Yeah, they were definitely tracking in the right direction and playing as well as anybody in the bubble. And I think when you got a young team like that, they were really able to carry that momentum into this year. And they're kind of in a pretty good spot in that they carried momentum out of the bubble, but they're a young team and they didn't have the wear and tear of last year's playoffs on their legs. Because that's another thing we can get into later about the teams that went deep last year with a quick turnaround haven't fared all that well this year. But so Phoenix came in with young, fresh legs, a lot of momentum out of the bubble, and then they added a veteran, stabilizing, elite presence in Chris Paul. So they were a team. I think if you were paying attention to what happened in the bubble and at the end of last season. And then coming into this season, I think most people expected Phoenix to continue on that track, but I don't think anybody expected them to be the 2 seed in the West and really at this point a legitimate threat to reach the NBA Finals.
Yeah, Phoenix has done a tremendous job. But what can you say about the makeup of this Phoenix team? What do you like about it? What surprises you about it? What can you say about what you saw on paper as opposed to what we're seeing on the court?
Well, I think first and foremost, Devin Booker has been, on the cusp of that elite level NBA player, for a couple of years, and it's been a little bit of obscurity because the team hasn't had a ton of. So, I think you're seeing him really step onto the national stage and start to be recognized as really one of the great young elite players in the game. And, I think Monty Williams has done a great job there and probably is the inside track on being the coach of the year in the NBA this season. I think a lot of people are thinking he's going to come away with that award. So I think the other guy that's really kind of stepped up, and when he first came out, as a number 1 draft pick and everything, Ayton was, a lot of people were on the verge of not really calling him a bust, but calling him a disappointment. But he has really come into his own this year and down the stretch in the playoffs. So, I think that's a team that, they're really kind of ahead of the learning curve a little bit, and were able to skip a grade, so to speak, when they picked up Chris Paul. But I think if they can keep that core together, they're built for success for the immediate future.
Yeah, the Phoenix Suns putting in that work, winning in 6 games, 4-2, taking this series away from LeBron and company. I said last Friday when I announced the Phoenix Suns as the top dog of the week, presented by Canine Camp Dog Daycare and Canine Campground Dog Boarding, your home for short and long-term care for your dog, right here in East Syracuse off of Bridge Street. I gave them the credit, Dave, because the media as a whole is going to talk about Anthony Davis's injury and LeBron. Do you think that Phoenix is getting enough credit, or is just this giant overshadowing of Anthony Davis and LeBron and health and this and that? Do you think Phoenix is getting credit, or do you think it's being kind of masked over by the LeBron Davis show?
No, I think people that are paying attention to what's going on are starting to really recognize Phoenix and everything. They're a team that they don't play in a major market, and they haven't had a lot of recent success, so they're not a known commodity on the national stage. But I think the deeper they go in this playoffs, and I think people took notice of them beating the Lakers, and on one hand, everything you say is true about the Lakers. Lakers are banged up and not at 100%, but nevertheless, the Lakers are the Lakers, and they're the defending champs, and LeBron is LeBron, and Phoenix was able to knock them out of the playoffs. So I think that in and of itself caught a lot of fresh legs, a lot of momentum out of the bubble. Because even with all of the the injuries and the issues with the Lakers are banged up, and then coming into the playoffs, a lot of people are still picking them as the favorite to come out of the West. Champs, and LeBron is LeBron. Phoenix, I think, and Phoenix was able to open some eyes on the national stage by winning that series. So,
speaking here with Dave Pasiak, longtime basketball coach and analyst, and your current NVU Linden men's basketball head coach for the D3 team that you will find in the great state of Vermont. Dave, to kind of move forward, from here and look at the other team from LA, what happened? And I know you put out some notes about this, but what was going on with the Clippers? They're the higher seed in the 4-5 matchup. Granted, the closest matchup by overall seeding, 4 and 5. So they're playing the Mavericks. The Mavericks come out, punch them in the mouth. The Mavericks look like they're going to take down Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers and Paul George company. And then all of a sudden, the Clippers win it 4-3. It's the only series that went to 7. Most of the series ended 4-0 or 4-1. Only 2 of them were 4-2, which was Denver over Portland and Phoenix over the Lakers. What the heck happened to the Clippers, and how are they looking coming into their series with the Jazz?
Well, Dallas has got to be sick because Dallas had a 2-0 lead, 2 wins in LA. They're up 20 early, game 3 in Dallas, and if they just hold off the Clippers in that game, it's 3-0 and the series is over. And instead, they let them back in Dallas, win in LA, go up 3-2, had a chance to close it out in Dallas. And so, I think the Mavericks got to be sick about losing that series. In terms of the Clippers, one of the things I think doesn't maybe get enough attention and enough play is I don't know how good of a tactical coach Ty Lue is. When he's had his successes, he's managing LeBron James and a great talented roster, and he's got kind of the same thing in LA with Kawhi and Paul George and whatnot. But one thing I think Ty Lue has proven to be very good at as a coach is kind of keeping a team together through adversity a little bit, and kind of keeping a demeanor and a quiet calmness and confidence that I think reflects on his team. And the one thing about the Clippers, they're in the hole. They didn't get rattled. They were kind of backs to the wall a couple different times in that series. You got Kawhi Leonard is proven to be, he's a great player, and he's a great player in the big situations. So I think when you have a guy like that, you're never shaking the playoff Paul bugaboo a little bit. I think he stepped up at times in that series where, Paul George has been to shrink a little bit. Sometimes when when you're able to fight through it like that, it's like the catalyst to go on a deep run. I mean, the Clippers are a really talented team, and on the one hand, Utah's playing exceptionally well, but on the other hand, I don't think it would shock a ton of people in the back. Easy, but his MO in the past, like when he was with Chicago and had good teams, is like the team doesn't always have a lot of gas left when postseason rolls around. So, I think that's something the Knicks need to take a look at too. But primarily, they need another. They need a